My name is Rebecca, and for 3 years I thought I was building a life with someone who loved me. Tyler was everything I thought I needed: charming, confident, from a successful family. I worked as a waitress at a downtown restaurant, paid my bills, covered my rent. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. It was mine. And never, not even for a second, did I think that would one day be used as a weapon against me, until that June night when everything fell apart right before my eyes. It was at Tyler's 25th birthday party at his parents' mansion that I finally understood what it meant to be treated as invisible. The house looked like something out of a magazine. Crystal chandeliers, flawless beige carpet, artwork on the walls worth more than I made in a year. Tyler's mother, Diane, always greeted me with that tight smile. You know the type. The kind that never reaches the eyes. She'd scan me up and down, like she was inspecting a defective product. That night, I was sitting at the end of the long table, trying to join in the conversation, when Diane threw the first dagger. Rebecca, dear, still waiting tables? How persistent of you. The whole room went quiet for 2 seconds. Then came the laughter. It wasn't a joke. It was a public execution. I felt my face burn. I tried to smile, to pretend it didn't hurt, but my heart was pounding so loud I thought everyone could hear it. Tyler laughed too. Not loudly, but enough. He didn't defend me. Not one word. His sister, Vanessa, jumped in next. At least she gets to wear a uniform, right, Mom? Imagine not even that. More laughter. I gripped my fork so tightly my fingers turned white. That moment wasn't about my job. It was about putting me in my place, reminding me that in their eyes, I'd never be good enough. And the worst part? I almost believed them. There's a saying that people show who they really are when they think you have no power. That night was exactly that. Tyler's father, Richard, who usually kept things subtle, decided to add his piece too. You know, Rebecca, we're not being cruel. It's just realism. People like you, well, statistically speaking, don't go very far in life. It's math. He said it while cutting his steak, like he was talking about the weather. Casual, cold, like it was career advice. I looked at Tyler again, silently begging him to say something. He avoided my eyes. In that moment, something inside me cracked. Not completely shattered yet, but cracked. When you're humiliated in front of people who should accept you, something strange happens. You start to doubt yourself. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe my job defines me. Those questions kept hammering in my head all through dinner. I barely ate, barely spoke. I just wanted it to end. But there's another thing that happens when you're cornered. You find out what you're made of. And that night, while Diane served dessert with that venomous smile, I made a decision. Not consciously, not out loud, but something inside me said, this will never happen again. You know what the cruelest part was? Not the words, the looks. Those looks of pity mixed with disdain, like I was a failed experiment, like Tyler was wasting his time with me. Diane even suggested in front of everyone that Tyler should expand his social horizons. Not subtle at all. A verbal knife. And Tyler? He just shrugged and said, Mom, relax. Relax. As if it were just harmless banter. As if my heart wasn't shattering right there at that ridiculously long table. Revenge wasn't even a thought yet. It was just pain. Raw, humiliating pain. On the drive home, the silence in the car was deafening. Tyler drove like nothing had happened. I stared out the window, watching city lights blur through my tears. You okay? He asked, more out of obligation than concern. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence speak for me, because in that moment, I understood a devastating truth. He was never going to defend me, because to him, his family was right. I was the problem. And that realization was the first step toward something I couldn't yet imagine, something that would change everything. But first, I had to make a decision that would hurt more than any insult Diane could ever throw at me. The conversation that changed my life happened inside that car, just 5 minutes from my apartment. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Tyler, do you even realize what your family did to me tonight? My voice was shaky. but steady. He sighed in that exhausted way, like I was the problem. They were just joking, Becca. You take everything too seriously. Joking. That word echoed in my head like a slap. So humiliation is a joke now? Making me feel small is humor? I took a deep breath and asked the question I was terrified to hear the answer to. Do you agree with them? The silence that followed said more than any words ever could. Tyler pulled up in front of my building but didn't turn off the engine. He stared at the steering wheel, like the words he needed were written on it. Look, Rebecca, my family has standards. They just want what's best for me. It's nothing personal against you. Standards. That word sounded like a death sentence. I felt something break inside my chest, but it wasn't sadness anymore. It was clarity, the brutal kind of clarity that comes when you finally see the truth you've been avoiding for months, maybe years. He didn't see me as his equal. He never did. I was temporary entertainment. And in that moment, revenge didn't have a name yet, but it already had a shape. I was never going to let anyone make me feel that small again. Tyler, we're done. The words left my mouth before my brain could catch up. He turned to me, genuinely shocked, like I'd just spoken another language. What? Over a joke? A joke? That damned word again. No, I said, unbuckling my seatbelt. Because of 3 years of you making me feel like I'll never be enough. Because you never stood up for me. Because I finally woke up. My hand was already on the door handle. I had to get out before my courage slipped away. Before the pain convinced me to accept crumbs again. He tried to grab my arm. Becca, you're being dramatic. We can talk about this. Dramatic. Another word to invalidate what I felt. I pulled my arm free and got out of the car. There's nothing left to talk about, Tyler. You made your choice tonight. You chose them, and I'm choosing me. I slammed the door and started walking toward my building. He shouted out the window, "You'll regret this. No one's going to want you with your kind of life." Those words should have destroyed me. They should have made me run back, begging for forgiveness. But you know what they did? They fueled me. They gave me purpose. They gave me just enough anger to turn pain into determination. I climbed the stairs to my apartment with shaking legs, locked the door, slid down against it until I was sitting on the floor, and then I cried. I cried for 3 wasted years. I cried for the humiliation. I cried for the version of me that let herself be treated that way for so long. But in the middle of those tears, something shifted. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was freedom. It felt like I had been carrying a weight for years, and for the first time, I was allowed to drop it. Revenge didn't have a plan yet, but it had a root. It was born from my refusal to stay small. That night, lying in bed and staring at the cracked ceiling of my tiny apartment, I made a silent promise to myself. It wasn't grand. It wasn't cinematic, just a whisper. They're going to know who I am. I didn't know how yet. I didn't know when, but I knew that the Rebecca who settled for crumbs had died in that car. A new one was being born. And this new Rebecca was hungry. Hungry to prove them wrong. Hungry to show that people like me could rise. And when I did, the view from the top would be delicious. In the days that followed, Tyler tried calling me 17 times. His messages swung from apologies to insults to desperate attempts to win me back. I blocked his number, blocked his entire family on social media. I needed silence. I needed space. Because I was planning something, even if I didn't yet know exactly what it was. You know that feeling when you just know your life is about to turn? That the next chapter will be nothing like the one before? That was me. And while Tyler was probably whining to his family about how ungrateful and dramatic I was doing something he never imagined I could do. The first thing I did the next morning was sit at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a blank sheet of paper. Sounds simple, right? But that blank page represented everything. My future, my choices, my freedom. At the top, I wrote, "Who do I want to be?" Not, "What do I want to have?" Or, "How will I prove them wrong?" But who? Because I realized something important during that sleepless night. The best revenge isn't about destroying the people who hurt you. It's about building a version of yourself so incredible that they regret ever doubting you. And that kind of building starts with brutal honesty about where you are and where you want to go. I looked around my apartment. It was small. The walls had damp stains, and the couch was secondhand. But it was mine, earned with my own work. No one had gifted it to me. No one had paid for me, and that meant something. It meant I knew how to work hard. I knew how to survive. The problem was, I'd been working hard on autopilot, with no real direction, just surviving. Diane once said people like me don't rise in life. But she was wrong about one crucial thing. She thought I'd stay the same person. But change doesn't ask for permission. It happens the moment the pain of staying where you are becomes greater than the fear of moving forward. I grabbed my phone and started researching, not for better jobs or quick courses, but for stories of people who started from zero and built empires, people who were underestimated and turned the game around. I spent hours reading, watching videos, absorbing every word like oxygen. And you know what all those stories had in common? None of them began with revenge as the main motivation. They began with a decision that the past wouldn't dictate the future, that other people's opinions wouldn't be the final verdict. Revenge was just the sweet side effect of a life well lived. And I wanted my life to be sweet, very sweet. One word kept showing up in my research: investment. Specifically, real estate investment. At first, it sounded ridiculous. Me? Investing in property? I could barely pay rent some months. But the more I read, the more it made sense. Property is power. Property generates passive income. Property appreciates over time. And here's the beautiful thing about property. It doesn't care who you are, where you come from, or what people think of you. If you have the money and make smart choices, it's yours. No one can take that from you with poisonous words at a dinner table. I started taking notes, doing calculations, making plans. For the first time in years, I felt something I had forgotten: hope. But hope without action is just a dream. And I didn't want to dream. I wanted to build. The next day, I went to work at the restaurant with a new notebook in my bag. Every time I had a free minute, I wrote things down. How much I earned, how much I spent, where I could cut costs, how long it would take to save up an initial amount for an investment. My coworkers noticed. "Becca, are you okay? You seem obsessed," my friend Sarah asked. I smiled. I'm better than ever. And it was true. Because obsession with purpose is different from destructive obsession. One consumes you, the other builds you. And I was building something I couldn't even fully see yet. I cut everything non-essential. Netflix? Canceled? Nights out? Only the free ones. New clothes? Only if something ripped. I started packing my own meals instead of eating out. Walked to work whenever possible instead of taking the bus. Every penny saved went into a separate account I mentally called my future fund. The people around me thought I'd lost my mind or fallen into depression after the breakup. But I wasn't crazy or broken. I was focused. Focus is a funny thing. It looks like madness from the outside, but feels like pure clarity on the inside. And my clarity had a very specific name: freedom. Freedom from ever needing anyone's validation again. 3 months after the breakup, I had saved $200. It might not sound like much, but to me, it was a fortune. Proof that I could do it. That discipline works. That small, consistent actions lead to real results. I sat down again with my notebook and did the math. If I kept going at this pace, in a year I'd have enough to make my first real move. But a year felt like forever. So I made another decision: to get a second job. I started driving for Uber at night after my restaurant shifts. I was sleeping 4, maybe 5 hours a night. Was I exhausted? Yes. But I was alive. I was building. And somewhere deep down, a voice whispered, "They have no idea what's coming." The next 2 years of my life were the hardest and the most transformative I've ever lived. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't inspiring like those motivational videos online. It was exhausting, lonely, and full of moments when I wanted to give up. There were nights I came home at 3 a.m. after driving Uber and collapsed into bed, crying from sheer exhaustion. Days when I served tables with a fake smile while my feet screamed in pain. But you know what kept me going? The memory of that dinner. Diane's voice saying people like me don't rise in life. Every time I wanted to quit, I closed my eyes and heard those words again, and instead of breaking me, they pushed me forward. The revenge wasn't anger anymore. It was fuel. In the first year, I enrolled in an online business management course. It was basic, but it was what I could afford. I studied late at night, after Uber, before restaurant shifts. My brain felt like mush most of the time, but I absorbed every concept like it was classified information. I learned about cash flow, ROI, market analysis, negotiation, things Tyler's family probably discussed over breakfast. But I was learning them the hard way, alone, without a safety net. And there's a hidden advantage in that. When you earn knowledge through sacrifice, it sticks to you differently. It becomes part of who you are. It becomes armor. I started attending property auctions on Saturdays. At first, I just observed, sat in the back, took notes, watched how people behaved, what questions they asked, how prices escalated. I was invisible there, just another curious face, but I was learning the game, learning the rules, and I discovered something fascinating. The real estate market doesn't care about your last name or where you come from. It cares about numbers, strategy, timing, and those were things I could control. For the first time in my life, I was in a field where effort and intelligence mattered more than family connections. It was liberating, it was fair, and I was hooked. After 18 months of brutal saving, I had $12,000. Not much, but enough to start. I found a small apartment being auctioned off because the previous owner had defaulted. It was in a forgotten neighborhood, needed serious renovation, but it had potential. I placed my first bid. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the paddle. I won it for $11,500. When the auctioneer's gavel hit, my heart nearly burst. It wasn't an empire. It was a rundown apartment in a sketchy area. But it was mine. My first property, my first step. And in that moment, revenge stopped being abstract. It had an address. I renovated that apartment with my own 2 hands, literally. I learned to replace faucets on YouTube. I painted the walls myself over 3 weekends, sanded the wooden floor until my palms were raw. I couldn't afford to hire anyone, so I became the plumber, painter, carpenter, and electrician. Every finished room was a victory. Every solved problem was proof that Diane was wrong. People like me don't just rise in life. We build the staircase with our own hands. And when I finally finished, I listed the apartment for rent. 3 days later, a young student signed the lease. $800 a month. My first rental income. My first taste of passive income. I reinvested that money, kept working double shifts, saving, hunting for more opportunities. 6 months later, I bought a second property, then a third. Each one needed work. Each one was transformed by my sweat and determination. My friends started losing touch with me. Sarah complained that I never went out anymore. Becca, you've turned into a workaholic. You need to live a little. But she didn't get it. I was living. For the first time ever, I was truly alive. Not surviving, not settling for scraps, but building, brick by brick, property by property. And with each purchase, I felt it growing inside me, that closeness to something big, something that would change everything. In my 3rd year, I met Jake. He was an architect, brought in to assess one of the properties I wanted to renovate. Tall, kind eyes, calm demeanor, the complete opposite of Tyler. When he saw my Excel spreadsheet with all my ROI calculations, renovation timelines, and value projections, he stopped and looked at me with genuine admiration. "You did all this by yourself?" I nodded. He smiled. "You're the most impressive person I've ever met." Those words, so simple, yet so different from what I was used to hearing. There was no condescension, no surprise that someone like me could do it. There was respect, recognition. And right there, I realized my transformation wasn't just financial. I had become someone I respected, and that was the sweetest revenge of all. But the big move was still ahead. 4.5 years after that humiliating dinner, I was in a position I never imagined possible. I had a portfolio of 12 properties, an LLC registered as RH Property Group, and a growing reputation in the local real estate market. I wasn't rich, but I was stable. More than stable, I was free. Free from other people's opinions, free from needing validation, free from the fear of not being enough. Jake and I had gotten engaged 3 months earlier, at a simple picnic in the park where we used to review renovation plans. He proposed with a modest ring and the biggest smile, and I said yes without hesitation, because he saw who I had become, not who I was when someone tried to define me. But the universe still had one card to play, a card I never asked for, but accepted with a quiet smile. It was a rainy Tuesday when my real estate broker, Daniel, called, excited. "Rebecca, I've got something you need to see. It's big. Maybe out of your current budget, but I swear it's worth a look." It was a 3-story commercial building downtown. 8 retail units, prime location, solid structure, but in need of modernization. The owner was selling fast for personal reasons, price below market. My heart sped up. Opportunities like that come once in a lifetime. "Send me the details," I said, already running the numbers in my head. He sent them. When I opened the file with the list of current tenants, I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't dreaming. There, in Unit 302, Thompson & Associates investment firm. Tyler's dad's company. My first reaction was to laugh. That incredulous, almost hysterical laugh you make when you've won the lottery without buying a ticket. Jake was beside me and asked what was going on. I showed him the screen. "That's my ex's family's office. The same ex whose family told me I'd never get anywhere." Jake looked at me, then at the screen, then back at me. And do you know what he said? "You're going to buy that building." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Because he knew me. Knew my story. Knew my journey. He knew this wasn't coincidence. It was destiny. The universe finally cashing the check on the revenge I hadn't even known I was collecting. But I'm not impulsive. Never have been. I told Daniel to schedule a full inspection. I brought Jake, my accountant, and a structural engineer. I spent 3 hours inspecting every corner, every wall, every electrical system. I wouldn't let emotion make a bad financial decision for me. And what I discovered, the building was solid, great location. The tenants had impeccable payment histories. It needed cosmetic upgrades, but nothing structural. Objectively, it was an excellent investment. That the Thompsons were tenants? Just the cherry on top. A cherry on a cake I'd baked with my own sweat over 4.5 years. Revenge wasn't the goal, but when it comes included with a sound investment, you accept it gratefully. I made my offer. It was everything I'd saved and invested, plus a bank loan my now clean record allowed. 48 tense hours of negotiation. The seller had other offers, but mine was cash and contingency-free. I wanted that building, not just for the sweet revenge it represented, but because it was the next level for my empire. The consolidation of everything I'd built. On Friday afternoon, Daniel called. "Rebecca, it's yours. Congratulations. You now own a commercial building downtown." I hung up and sat in silence for 5 minutes. Then I cried, relief, pride, gratitude. I cried for the Rebecca from 4 years ago who thought she'd never be enough. I cried because I proved she was wrong. The most delicious part? No one knew. Tenants received a formal notice of ownership change signed by RH Property Group. Just a corporate name. Impersonal, professional. Richard and Diane Thompson had no idea the waitress they humiliated now owned the building where they conducted their business. Vanessa, with her chic boutique in Unit 105, didn't either. And Tyler? He probably hadn't thought of me in ages. Perfect. True revenge doesn't need an audience. It's savored privately, in a secret smile you keep for yourself. But the universe, ever ironic, had other plans. Because secrets, no matter how well kept, eventually surface. And when they do? Oh, when they do. In the first weeks as owner, I kept everything strictly professional. I hired a management company to handle tenants. I didn't want direct contact yet. I wanted to observe, plan, and savor that silent position of power, Funny how life puts you exactly where you need to be when you least expect it. 4 years ago, I was sitting at that table being humiliated. Now I was signing their lease agreements. I didn't jack up rents dramatically. Could have been easy and legally defensible. But that's not my style. I increased by only 8%, the market standard. Because revenge isn't cruelty. Revenge is success lived with elegance. And I had become elegant. In money, in attitude, in the way I ran my business. One thing remained, for them to know. And that day was closer than I thought. 3 weeks after signing the building papers, I got a call from the management company. Ms. Harper, we have a tenant insisting on speaking directly with the owner. It's about a maintenance issue she says is urgent. I knew who it was before they even asked. Diane Thompson. Always dramatic, always demanding, always acting like the world should stop to meet her needs. What's the problem? I asked, keeping my voice professional. A leak in the office bathroom. Our team scheduled the repair for tomorrow, but she insists it needs to be today and wants to speak with you in person. I glanced at my calendar. I had a meeting in an hour, but some opportunities you don't let pass. Schedule it for 40 minutes from now in my office. I hung up and took a deep breath. I'd waited 4.5 years for this moment. Another 40 minutes wasn't going to kill me. I chose my outfit carefully. A flawless gray suit I'd bought the month before. The first expensive piece I'd ever owned. Subtle, elegant heels. Hair in a professional bun. Light makeup. I wanted to look exactly what I was. A successful businesswoman. Not flashy, but confident. Not arrogant, but secure. I looked in the mirror before leaving and almost didn't recognize the woman staring back. Where was the insecure waitress who accepted crumbs? Where was the girl who shrank under judgmental glances? She died in that car 4 years ago. The woman in the mirror was someone else. Someone who'd built an empire brick by brick. Someone the revenge had shaped but not defined. And she was ready. Diane arrived 15 minutes late, as always. She walked into my office talking on her phone, finger raised for 1 minute. Didn't even look at me. Typical. I finished reviewing some papers and let the silence work in my favor. When she finally hung up and looked up, our eyes met. I saw confusion first. Do I know this face from somewhere? Then recognition. Her eyes widened. Her mouth parted. The phone nearly slipped from her hand. Rebecca? She breathed, incredulous. I smiled. Not a smile of revenge. Just the smile of someone exactly where she belonged. Mrs. Thompson, lovely to officially meet you as your landlord. Landlord, owner, the woman who owned the building where she ran her business. Her face went through 5 shades of red in 3 seconds. You bought this building? She stammered, still processing. I leaned forward slightly, fingers interlaced on the desk, posture of someone completely in control. I did, along with 11 others this year. Regarding the leak in your bathroom, my team can have it fixed tomorrow morning, first thing. Is that sufficient, or would you prefer I prioritize it as an emergency? I can have someone there in 2 hours, but that would incur an urgent service fee. I spoke calm and professional, as if discussing any ordinary business. As if I weren't the same person she'd humiliated years ago. Because deep down, I wasn't. I had evolved. She hadn't. Diane tried to recover her composure. You could see her mind racing, trying to figure out how this was possible, how the contemptible waitress had become the owner of the space she rented. Tomorrow is fine, she murmured, still in shock. Then she tried a different tack, forcing a smile that never reached her eyes. Rebecca, what a wonderful surprise. You've grown. Tyler always said you had potential. Tyler. Of course she would bring up Tyler. Trying to create a connection, soften the past. I kept my polite smile. Interesting. I distinctly remember you saying the exact opposite. Something about people like me not rising in life. Statistics, you said. The silence that followed was delicious. Pure, crystallized discomfort. She swallowed. That was misinterpreted. We've always believed in you. A lie. But lies have short legs when the truth is sitting across the desk signing your contracts. Mrs. Thompson, There's no need to rewrite the past. It is what it is. The future, however, we can build professionally. Your lease is current, you're an exemplary tenant, and as long as that remains true, our relationship will be perfectly cordial. Anything else to discuss? I kept the tone light, but the message was clear. I was in control now. No rancor. No need to humiliate her back. I had something better. Real superiority, not imagined. And she knew it. God, how she knew. Diane stood, took her bag with slightly trembling hands. No, I think that's everything. Thank you for your time. She turned toward the door, but paused. Without looking back, she said quietly, You proved we were wrong. It wasn't an apology. It was an admission. And in a way, it meant more. When the door closed behind her, I let a genuine smile surface. The smile of someone who just closed the circle. The revenge hadn't been planned, but it was perfect. Silent for years, loud in a single moment. And now, I was sure the news would spread. Tyler would find out. The whole family would find out. The waitress they'd scorned was now their landlord. And that, my friends, was poetic justice at its purest. But the story didn't end there. In fact, the most satisfying part was only just beginning. It took exactly 6 hours for Tyler to find out. 6 hours between Diane leaving my office and my phone buzzing with a message from a number I hadn't saved but recognized instantly. I was at home with Jake, celebrating with simple pizza and cheap wine, because some victories don't need expensive champagne to be sweet. When I saw the notification, my heart skipped a beat. Not from nerves, from anticipation. Jake caught my expression. Is it him? I nodded. You gonna answer? I looked at the phone, then at him. I will, but on my time. I left the message unread while I finished my pizza, because one of the greatest lessons I'd learned over the years was this. Whoever controls the timing controls the conversation. And I was in no rush. The message was exactly what I expected. Hey, Becca. Been a while. Heard you're doing really well. That's amazing. I always knew you had it in you. Would be great to reconnect, grab a coffee, catch up. Let's leave the past behind, yeah? We meant a lot to each other. I read it 3 times. Every word was a masterpiece of manipulation disguised as kindness. I always knew you had it in you. A blatant lie, considering he agreed when his family said the opposite. Let's leave the past behind. Translation. Let's pretend I didn't treat you like garbage. We meant a lot to each other. Rewriting history to make it sound like it was mutual. Revenge wasn't just about success. It was about seeing, with absolute clarity, who people really are once the mask falls. I waited 2 days to reply. 2 days where he probably checked his phone 50 times. Anxious and confused by my silence. 2 days where he had to sit with the uncomfortable truth that I didn't need him anymore, that he had become irrelevant in my life. When I finally decided to respond, I sat down with Jake and crafted every word like it was a contract. Because it was. The closing contract of a chapter. Tyler, thanks for the message, but I'll have to pass. You always knew I had potential? Funny. I vividly remember you and your family spending years telling me the opposite, and you sitting there, silently agreeing, if not actively participating. Pause. Breathe. Continue. I don't need to reconnect. I have a full life, surrounded by people who believed in me long before I believed in myself, people who stood by me when it was hard, not those who showed up when it was convenient. Every word was a precise, surgical strike. Not cruel, just true. But I genuinely appreciate you proving my point. People only value you when you no longer need them. When you build something so undeniable, they have no choice but to acknowledge it. That's taught me more about character than any course ever could. I reread it. Jake read it too. It's perfect, he said. But are you sure you want to include the last part? I smiled. Absolutely. Oh, and regarding business matters, any issues related to your lease or the building can be directed to my management team. I keep all business relationships strictly professional. Take care. Rebecca Harper, your landlord. That your landlord at the end wasn't necessary. It was salt in the wound, the final punctuation I needed. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. And you know what I felt? Nothing. Emotional emptiness in the best possible way. He no longer had power over me, not to hurt me, not to give me satisfaction through revenge. He was just an indirect tenant in my building, a name on a contract. And that was liberating in ways I didn't even know I needed. His reply came 15 minutes later. 3 long defensive paragraphs trying to justify the past, saying I was twisting things, that he'd always respected me, that I was being unfair. I left it on read, never replied, because I'd learned something fundamental. You don't need the last word to win. Sometimes silence says more than 1,000 arguments. I blocked his number, not out of anger, but out of mental hygiene, out of respect for the Rebecca I had become. She didn't need mediocre exes trying to rewrite history. She had an incredible fiancé, a growing empire, and a life she built with her own hands. Revenge had come full circle, not with fireworks, with peace. 2 weeks later, Vanessa, Tyler's sister, DM'd me on Instagram. She'd unblocked me and was trying to reconnect. "Hey Becca, it's been so long. You look amazing. I'd love to grab lunch, catch up, and hear all about your inspiring journey." Inspiring. Now it was inspiring. When I was waiting tables, I was pitiful. When I became the owner of the building she rents, I was inspiring. The hypocrisy was so transparent it was almost pitiful. I replied with polite frost, "Hi, Vanessa. My office is open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday, for any matters regarding your boutique's lease. Any other inquiries can be directed to my administrative team. Best. Simple. Direct. Final. Because some bridges you don't rebuild. You just acknowledge they broke for a reason and keep building new roads in better directions. And my roads? They were taking me places the old Rebecca never even dreamed existed. So where does that leave you? Because this story isn't just mine. It belongs to everyone who's ever been underestimated, ignored, or humiliated by people who should have known better. The real question isn't, how did Rebecca make it? The question is, what are you going to do with the pain you're carrying right now? Because pain has 2 destinations. It either paralyzes you or propels you. It either defines you or refines you. And the difference between those 2 paths? It's a choice. A choice you make every single day when you wake up. Are you going to let someone's poisonous words set your ceiling? Or will you use those same words as fuel to build the roof of your own empire? Here's what I've learned over these 5 years. Revenge isn't an event. It's a process. It doesn't happen the day you confront the person who hurt you. It happens in every late night you choose to study instead of sleep. In every no you say to temporary comfort. In every moment you look in the mirror and decide that someone else's opinion of you isn't worth more than your own. Tyler's family didn't transform me. They just lit the fuse. I did the work. I carried the bricks. I built the staircase. And when I finally climbed it, the view was better than any revenge I could have planned. Now I want you to stop and think. Who underestimated you? Who said you weren't capable? Who laughed at your dreams, your choices, your life? And more importantly, what are you going to do with that? Because you've got 2 options. Option 1, prove them right. Give up. Accept the victim role. Carry that resentment like a stone on your back for the rest of your life. Option 2, prove they were too small-minded to see your potential. Build something so undeniable that when they come back, and they always do, you'll have the privilege of deciding whether to open the door or not. And here's a spoiler. The best feeling isn't slamming the door in their face. It's realizing you don't even care if the door's open or closed, because you're too busy living well. Let me ask you a few questions. Answer them in the comments below. First, have you ever had a dinner table moment where someone humiliated you in front of others? How did you handle it? Second, if you could go back and tell something to the version of yourself who was hurting, what would it be? Third, what's your building? What's that one achievement that would be the perfect irony in your story? And fourth, the most important one, what are you going to do today, right now, to start building it? Because plans without action are just pretty dreams. And you didn't come this far, you didn't watch until the end, just to keep dreaming. Listen, I don't know what your struggle is. I don't know who hurt you or how many times you wanted to give up. But I know one thing. If this story stirred something in you, if it reignited that tiny flame deep down you thought was gone, then you already have what it takes. You have pain. And pain, when channeled right, is the most powerful fuel there is. Stronger than motivation. Longer lasting than inspiration. Pain wakes you up at 3 a.m. Pain keeps you working while everyone else is watching Netflix. Pain reminds you why you started when everything feels impossible. So don't waste it. Use it. Transform it. Let it shape you into someone you, yourself, will respect. And if you made it this far, if you've listened to my full story, then I have one thing to ask. Subscribe to this channel. Hit that bell. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that transformation isn't a solo event. We need stories. We need examples. We need to know other people have fallen, gotten up, and built something incredible. And I have more stories to share. Stories of people who flipped the script, who turned pain into power, who proved the statistics wrong. You don't have to walk this path alone. And every time you watch one of these stories, you're literally rewiring your brain to believe it's possible. Because it is. I'm living proof, and you can be next. One last thing before I go. Revenge isn't about them. It never was. It's about finally becoming the person you were always capable of being. It's about looking in the mirror and liking who looks back. It's about building a life so full, so rich, so entirely yours that when those people from your past try to come back, you'll realize something freeing. They don't fit anymore, because you've grown, you've evolved, and the space they used to occupy is now filled with people who always saw you. So go, build your empire, and when you get to the top, leave me a comment. I want to celebrate with you, because every time someone proves they were right about themselves, everyone still fighting gains a little more hope. And hope is the first brick. Now go build the rest.